Hello, hello, Dr. Kirk here again to talk to you about your annotated bibliography. But before I do that, I wanted to just show you what I landed on for my research topic. And I was thinking about Mike Post, as I've mentioned to you so many times now, about his interesting TV theme music. And just that in itself was not really a complete topic. There actually have been quite a few things already written about him, about his biography, his life and work, even what his theme music was known for, like a sort of rock and roll theme, became really popular because of him. So that all by itself wasn't really a topic. So what I landed on here was, is it bad to be popular? And hopefully you can see my little title page here on the screen. And my research topic, here's the description. This is not a complete, like an abstract. That's going to come a little bit further down the line. This is a little bit more informal, but provides at least the topic. And I'll read it to you if it's not super clear on the screen. So it says, is it bad to be popular? Musicologists and serious music lovers have traditionally held this opinion. This paper will present a friendly, well-reasoned argument that the methods used to evaluate popular music versus so-called serious music are flawed. Furthermore, the author will assert that popular music has value and can bring joy to music listeners. Using musicological research on popular music and music for television and films, specifically pulling examples from Mike Post's television theme music of the 1980s, this paper will show that popular television themes have musicological value and should stand amongst other great compositions of our time. So traditionally, musicologists, as I said, have really looked down on popular music, and especially television music of this genre is not, it's not on par with classical music, not by the accounts of most musicologists anyway. And so it's interesting to then flesh out in my article what makes something have value, and why is it that so many people, scholars, look down on things that are popular, thinking that they have no value because they're not classical, when clearly they do. They have value. And so we're going to talk about how do we measure those things and use examples of things that are popular and so on. So anyway, I'll bring that all out as I get that all down on paper a little bit later in this semester. So I wanted to talk to you about our annotated bibliography. Here is the assignment page. Hopefully you can see on your screen, it's just under the assignments tab on Blackboard. I'm sure you've already seen it. There is a great example in your guide for library research in music. Your text in chapter 7 is a lot of different representative examples of what an annotated bibliography would look like, what an abstract would look like, what a review looks like, and so on. I'm sure you've looked at some of those already. The page on the annotated bibliography is great, very, very detailed. And most of those annotations are quite long, long paragraphs even. And they don't have to be quite that long. But first, let's talk about what we do need to have. So I asked here for you to provide a cover page with the title and so on, just like what I was showing on my research topic. And that's really just, we get practice doing that. That's not something official that every annotated bibliography has to have a title page necessarily. But it looks nice and it presents it formally, and that's kind of nice. Okay, and then you're going to have at least 10 sources listed in your bibliography. They need to be scholarly journals and or books. Okay, at least 10 of those. Hopefully you've already found some of those. And then I said here, reliable websites may also be used in addition to, but not instead of, your journals and books. So you don't want your entire research to only be done on websites. Okay, you want some scholarly journals and books. And the biggest reason for that is because the process that goes into a scholarly journal is a peer-reviewed process, meaning you're not going to have just anybody, like you may have on a website, just anybody can put up a website and say whatever they want to say. And if you as a scholar take that to be fact, and write your own, write that as part of your research, that may be wrong, right? They might have posted just anything they felt like it, purely their own opinion or whatever. And so our scholarly journals are peer reviewed by other scholars. They're fact checking everything that's there, and they're making sure that all that research is sound. So those are things that you want to pull from, then you know that they are reliable. Now, you may still disagree with what those authors say, that's okay, but you know that that information is reliable anyway. And so if you have websites and things that you find that are really useful, especially if you're writing about things that are very current, that you may find interviews, video interviews, websites, things like that, you can cite those also, but make sure that you have journals and books. Okay. Next, number 4 here, I said, make sure that your citations are in Chicago manual style. You can easily find a style guide online. There are actually quite a few of them. And I can post one for you as well. You just want to double, triple check that all of your citations are fitting that style guide. That's real important. And then lastly, the annotation part of your annotated bibliography is just that you're providing a description for each of the sources of what it is that makes that source useful, what it covers, and how that's going to be useful specifically for your research. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my own annotated bibliography for you. And just a second here, I'll bring it up for our screen. There it is. All righty. Okay. All right. So this title page looks just the same as the one that I had for my research topic, because it is the same. All right. And then here I have numbered. Now the one in your textbook is not numbered. It's just listed as a bibliography. And that's no specific requirement one way or another. There's not a big requirement in terms of formatting on this. So I've included each of my sources so far. I think I probably will add to this as I get writing. I think there's a little more that I can find in terms of popular music related to television. But if I just scroll a little bit down the page here, you can see hopefully that I have 11 sources so far. 10 of those are scholarly journals or books, and one of them is a website. And I'm sure that I will have more as I get going. And, oh, sorry, I scrolled a little too far. And then my annotations here are usually several lines long. They don't have to be giant paragraphs, but they need to be more than a sentence, a few sentences as to what's helpful in that source. So let me just read a little bit of it so you can get an idea. This doesn't have to be super scholarly writing. In other words, I am writing a bit of this in first person. That is my own response to how this source is going to help me in my own research. And so let me just read a few of these. So this first one is a book. I said this book gives a thorough description of some of my post's biggest television themes, such as, I give several examples. And then I said it is very useful information, but most of this actually is covered in video interviews that are also posted on my post's website. So I did pull from a bit of this in my research. I also found some of it redundant. All right, the next one is a book by Aaron Copland, which included a segment on film music, a whole chapter actually on film music, which is really interesting. So of course, I love Copland and how much research I've already done on him. But it's really interesting for him to talk about how looked down upon the West Coast is, because of course he was a New Yorker, but a lot of the scholarly composers over on the East Coast, certainly at his time, really did look down on the West Coast. But Copeland makes a point of saying, well, Hollywood is actually a place where composers are needed. Of course, because of films, and then later, because television wasn't a thing at this time for television. And so it's interesting because this is where composers are actually having their works heard more so than what you would find in a classical concert hall. More people are going to watch TV and movies and hear that music than will walk into the Disney Concert Hall and hear a live concert. So that was interesting to hear his assessment of that even back in 1941. So obviously the information about how a film is scored and all of that is current now, from his point of view in 1941 is pretty outdated, but his assessment of what music should do in a film or how it should reach people and all of that was really interesting. There are several more of these. Of course, I'm not going to read them all to you, but I will post this for you if you're just interested to see what I had to say about any of these, or if you're just curious about formatting or whatnot. But as I said, there's not a real requirement. I'm not going to ding you if you don't have paragraphs indented a certain way or if you don't have them numbered a certain way. But do make sure that a few things, make sure you have at least 10 scholarly sources, any websites, video interviews, personal interviews, if you happen to know an expert in the field that you're researching, you can interview a person, that's okay. That could be great, in fact, but that's going to be in addition to those 10 scholarly sources. Do make sure that your citations meet the style guide. And as I said, there are zillions of those available online, and I will also post a link for you. And then lastly, make sure that you include at least a few, if not several sentences on what is useful about that source. That's part of what's going to tell me how you've been researching so far. If you are just copying and pasting a bunch of sources, but they're not things that you've actually read or dug into yet, that'll be clear if you're not able to give a description of what it actually provides. So you should have already read all of the ones that you post here and be able to give a pretty good description of what it is that source does for you and how useful it may be in your own research. Okay, so as usual, please let me know if you have any other questions. I will be available via email, and I'm happy to answer anything that you may want to know. All right, take care, everybody.